Hey everyone, Shadowlands here and welcome to my Assassination Rogue PvP guide for Shadowlands Season 2 patch 9.1. In this guide I'll cover stat priority and gearing, poisons, talents and honor talents, covenants, conduits, legendaries, rotation, macros and arena comps. This guide is likely to be a bit long as there are many things to talk about, so I added timestamps in the description to help you navigate through the guide. And now let's begin with stat priority and gearing. As Assassination Rogue, the stat priority is Versatility, Haste, Mastery, and Critical Strike. Versatility increases all your damage done and decreases all your damage taken. Therefore, it will make you more deadly and more durable, which is why it is the best stat for PvP. The damage increase part is further increased by 40% if you have 2 PvP trinkets equipped, making Versatility even more valuable. Haste increases your auto-attack damage and as a consequence also increases your poison damage. It also increases damage of your dots as Haste makes your dots stick faster. On top of directly increasing your damage, Haste also increases your energy regeneration in two ways. First, your passive energy regeneration scales with Haste, so you get more energy back every second the more haste you have. And second, thanks to the passive Venomous Wounds, you get 8 energy back every time your bleeds deal damage to a poison target. Since Haste increases the tick rate of your bleeds, you will get more energy through this passive the more haste you have. Having more energy means that you can use more abilities, which results in more overall damage. You get it, Haste does everything for an Assassination Rogue. Mastery is a flat damage increase to your bleeds and poisons. Attacks like Envenom, Poison Bomb, or even System Shock are considered poison attacks and thus are empowered by Mastery. It is a great stat, but not as good as Versatility or Haste. Critical Strike is not that good in PvP. Even though the passive Seal Fate gives some synergy with it, it remains worse than any other stat. Regarding gearing, you want PvP items only, as they scale higher than any other piece of gear in PvP combat. You want haste and versatility on as many pieces of gear as possible. Luckily for us, the leather PvP items have haste and versatility on every slot except for gloves, weapons, and the second ring. For the gloves and the ring, you will pick Mastery Versatility instead, and for the weapons, you don't have any choice and will be forced to pick Critical Strike Versatility. When it comes to trinkets, you want to use Gladiator's Shackle of Malediction as your first trinket. This trinket has recently been added to the game and is very powerful. When you use it, it will cast a chain on the enemy and then channel it for 4 seconds. Every second, it will deal damage and apply a healing absorb to your target. Using it in coordination with your team is a good way to secure kills. For your second trinket, you must pick Gladiator's Medallion as it is your only way out of stuns as a rogue. You typically die in stuns as a rogue, so having a way out is key. If you're a human and can already break out of stuns with your human racial ability, then you can pick the Relentless Brute in order to reduce the duration of incoming CC by 20%. That's all for stats and gearing. Let's now quickly talk about poisons. Before patch 9.1, we used Wound Poison alongside the talent Master Poisoner to have a 20% healing reduction effect on multiple targets. Deadly Poison was, and still is, about 20% of our overall damage, and so it wasn't worth using over Wound Poison. However, with patch 9.1, Assassination Rogues got a new honor talent called Hemotoxin. This talent allows Shiv to reduce healing received by 40% while it lasts. So now Shiv reduces healing received by 40% for 9 seconds, roughly every 25 seconds. Hemotoxin and Wound Poison do not stack, so when Shiv is on your target, Wound Poison has no effect. So in the end, Wound Poison has no effect for 9 seconds every 25 seconds or so. This makes Deadly Poison pull ahead of Wound Poison in terms of healing required by the enemy team. On top of the damage, using Deadly Poison makes poison management much easier because Deadly Poison lasts longer than Wound Poison, so you have to reapply it less often to secondary targets. It also makes Poison Dispels much less powerful against Assa, because whenever you apply Deadly Poison it immediately has full effect, whereas Wound Poison needs to be stacked up to 5. So long story short, I recommend using Deadly Poison in most, if not all situations. Time to talk about talents. On the first row you'll want to pick Master Poisoner. Before patch 9.1 we used this talent for 2 reasons. The first was to amplify the healing reduction effect of Wound Poison, and the second to amplify the slow of Crippling Poison. Now that we use Deadly Poison instead of Wound Poison, this talent remains very powerful, because it still amplifies the slow of Crippling Poison, making it a 60% slow, which is the second best slow of the game in PvP, and it also increases the damage of Deadly Poison by 30%, which works really well with the Conduit lethal poisons for even more damage. Elaborate Planning has become a viable option for more burst damage, but you lose some utility if you pick it as your slow gets less powerful. On the second row you'll want to pick Subterfuge. This talent will allow you to crowd control the entire enemy team every time you come out of stealth with Garrote and Cheap Shot. This will be useful to set up kills or to save yourself or your team from dying. It also increases the damage done by growth by 40% in PvP combat, and more damage is always welcome. On the third row you'll want to pick Marked for Death. This can be used for two different purposes, CC or damage. For CC you'll be able to use Marked for Death from stealth in order to open with Kidney Shot, leading to powerful openers, and you'll also have an on-demand Kidney Shot during the game if you have no combo points and an opportunity to kill appears and you need to stun right now. For damage you will simply use Marked for Death during your Kidney Shot goes in order to have one more Envenom when the target is stunned, which is a significant burst damage increase. Overall, a very versatile talent that can help you in many situations. Deeper Stratagem can be considered in some cases as having a 7-second Kidney Shot is nice, but it feels really slow to play with it as Assa. I personally don't like it that much. On the fourth row you'll want to pick Elusiveness. This is one of the best talents available to rogues as the class does not have any other ways to reduce incoming damage. Therefore, this talent is key to your survival in PvP. You will want to use this spell right before you get hit by a powerful ability such as Killsbolt, Divine Tool, or the Hunt. You may also use it when you're taking a lot of damage, even if there isn't one specific hard-hitting ability targeting you. And last, against classes that will try to kill you in a stun, so against a rogue, a monk, a warrior, or an elemental shaman for instance, you will want to try and use feint just before they use their Kidney Shot, Stormbolt, Leg Sweep, or Lasso. Pre-feinting a stun very often makes the difference between surviving and dying. On the fifth row you'll want to take Internal Bleeding. It adds a powerful bleed to your Kidney Shot, giving you even more damage on your Kidney Shot goes, and also giving you more energy through the passive Venomous Wounds. This talent is a lot more powerful than it appears. On the sixth row you'll want to pick Alacrity. As discussed in the stat priority section of this video, haste is one of our best stats. With this talent you'll have a bit more of it to deal more damage and regain more energy. This isn't an amazing or exciting talent by any means, but it is better than the other talents on that row. On the seventh and last row you'll want to pick Poison Bomb. Although you can't control when it procs, it remains a nice passive damage increase to your Envenoms and Ruptures. In the end, it will increase your sustained damage and sometimes your burst damage. Regarding Honda talents, Assassination Rogues have undergone a lot of changes with patch 9.1. There are now a lot more good talents to use, some were added, some were changed, and some were removed. Here I will talk about the different talents that are good enough to be used by order of importance, and after that I'll talk about the different combinations that you can use in the arena. The most important talent is the new one called Hemotoxin. This talent is extremely powerful as it allows Shiv to reduce the target's healing received by 40%. Shiv lasts for 9 seconds and has a 25-second cooldown, which means the healing reduction will have a good uptime. You'll have it on every go since you'll use Shiv alongside every Kidney Shot basically. That will negate a lot of healing on your target in case you can't get CC on the enemy healer or in case there is self-healing or off-healing going on. The one and only situation in which you won't pick this talent is if you're facing a double DPS comp with no real combat healing in twos, such as Rogue Mage or Rogue Hunter. Another strong pick is a talent we all know very well, Smoke Bomb. It creates a cloud of smoke around you for 5 seconds. Enemies inside cannot target anything outside, and enemies outside cannot target anything inside. This is extremely powerful and can be used in many different ways. First, you can use it alongside Kidney Shot on an enemy without a trinket to kill them, denying any healing from the rest of their team. You can also use it right after a CC chain on a healer ends to gain a few more seconds and maybe land a kill. Only do this if your target has no way to immediately get out of the cloud. Second, you can use it defensively to prevent a dangerous cast such as Killsbolt or Mind Games from landing on you or your teammates if that cast will result in a kill. Lastly, you can use it to prevent crowd control in your team such as a Polymorph or a Repentance on your healer if such a CC will cause you or another teammate to die. An all-around solid choice. There are, however, a few situations in which you will not pick this talent. For instance, in 2 vs 2 if you face Hunter Healer you will go for the healer the entire game, so you do not need Smoke Bomb. Again in 2 vs 2 against Arms Warrior, the best strategy is to cleave and go for the healer as much as possible, so Smoke Bomb isn't ideal there. Next up we have Dismantle. It allows you to disarm an enemy for 6 seconds every 45 seconds. Disarming an enemy can delay their next kill attempt or stop it entirely if they have already pulled the trigger. It is going to be useful against warriors, rogues, death knights and hunters. While it looks like a very defensive ability only used to stop damage, you can use it for more than that against warriors, hunters and death knights. A warrior cannot use Die by the Sword without a weapon, allowing you to land a kill. In the same way, a death knight cannot use Death Strike without a weapon, allowing you to land a kill. For hunters it is a bit different. The thing to know is that ranged hunter specs cannot use their interrupt while disarmed, which can allow your team to land crucial CC, cast a lethal spell, or even free cast heals in a difficult situation without being interrupted. Another interesting addition is the talent Thick as Thieves. It allows Tricks of the Trade to give a 15% damage buff to an ally for 6 seconds every 30 seconds. This talent can be quite powerful if one of your teammates has high damage on your goes. Mages, hunters, retribution paladins, and all priest specs benefit a lot from this. The Hunter talent maneuverability is also a decent option under specific circumstances. It has been buffed with patch 9.1 and now removes any root upon use, although it doesn't provide a root immunity. This talent will be useful against teams with heavy slows, preventing you from reaching your target or from escaping a dangerous enemy. System Shock can be a decent damage boost if you do not need any other talent more than this one, which will be extremely rare. You would need to be in a matchup where your partner doesn't have enough damage for a Thick as Thieves to be worth it, your enemy no slow important enough for you to pick maneuverability, and no weapon attack important enough for you to pick Dismantle. That being said, I sometimes use it alongside Thick as Thieves and Hemotoxin when facing a BM Hunter in 2s, as all I care about in this matchup is maximizing my damage output on their healer. Last we have Death from Above. This is a very situational pick that can serve as an additional gap closer. Note that it will follow enemies no matter where they go, so if you play this ability and manage to use it right before a warlock or a monk port away, you will appear on their port with them. It is also worth mentioning that this spell offers a very short CC immunity window when you leap in the air, so with great timing and immune CC such as Kidney Shot or Hammer of Justice. As I said, this talent is extremely situational, and with all the new 9.1 additions you will almost never have a slot for it. Now the question is, which ones should you pick against which comps? Let's begin with 2v2. In 2v2 you want to play Smoke Bomb, Dismantle and Maneuverability against Rogue Mage and Rogue Hunter. These are the only comps that don't require Hemotoxin due to their low combat healing, so you can instead focus on talents allowing you to stop their goes or reach them when they fall back. Against Warrior Healer you want to play Dismantle, Hemotoxin and Maneuverability. No need for Smoke Bomb. The best strategy is to dot both targets and kite the warrior as much as possible, while both targets die to your dots. You'll also want to use Kidney Shot on the healer whenever possible for added pressure. As such, Smoke Bomb makes little sense, and maneuverability instead to kite the warrior better is perfect. Against Hunter Healer you want to pick Hemotoxin, System Shock and Thick as Thieves. If your partner won't benefit from it, then Dismantle or Maneuverability depending on the healer you're facing are good. The reasoning is that against Hunters, you can only go for their healer as they will remove your dots all the time with their Feign Death legendary if you go for them, so you want to pick talents that give you the most damage on the enemy healer to kill him quickly. Against everything else you will want to play Smoke Bomb and Hemotoxin, and the last talent will change depending on what you're facing. If you're facing a Rogue or a Death Knight, Dismantle is a good idea. If you're facing a Windwalker or a Frost Mage, Maneuverability is a good idea. If you're facing a Feral, a Boomkin, a Shadow Priest, or a Fire Mage, then Thick as Thieves is great if you play with a healer that does damage, like a Priest or a Shaman, and otherwise System Shock will be better. Now for 3 vs 3 it's a bit different and much more simple. Basically, you will always play with Smoke Bomb and Hemotoxin, which leaves you with only one more talent. If you're facing a Warrior, a Frost Death Knight, a Rogue, or a Range Hunter spec, you will pick Dismantle. In other scenarios, you will pick Thick as Thieves. The reasoning is that against Warrior you want to disarm Warbreaker as it has the same cooldown. Warbreaker increased the warrior damage by 30%, so disarming it is quite effective. Usually they will also be a spear or avatar alongside Warbreaker, so you are certain to get value out of Dismantle. Against Frost Death Knight you want to use on Pillars of Frost as they spam Obliterate during that time for massive damage. Against Rogue you can use it either to stop their damage on a Kidney Shot on an ally, or just before they can stun your team and then you stun them first to regain the advantage. Against Hunters, you simply want to use it when there is a lot of damage going on and your team wants to free cast, as they can't interrupt without a bow. And for all other scenarios, you will have a DPS in your team, so playing Thick as Thieves offers more value than any of the other damaging talents such as System Shock. Also, usually you have a comp that can help you when you're in trouble, so maneuverability isn't usually required and Thick as Thieves ends up better overall. That's it for the talents and Hunter talents. It is now time to talk about a Shadowlands feature, the Covenant. You can choose between 4 different Covenants, Necrolord, Nightfare, Venthyr and Curian. Before going any further, I believe that at the moment, even though there is a best one and a worst one, all 4 Covenants are viable options for Assassination. I am myself a good example of that since I could reach top 200 earlier in the season as Nightfare, while the best Covenant would be Necrolord. So if you care much about min-maxing, then follow the meta, but if you're having a great deal of fun with one specific Covenant for whatever reason, be aware that it should not prevent you from being somewhat successful. Alright, so as I just said, the best Covenant for Assassination right now is Necrolord with the Plague Divisor Soulbind. Necrolords offer a lot of tankiness through their signature ability Fleshcraft, as well as through the Plague Divisor with Ultimate Form and the Ooze. The rogue ability's rated bone spike is really good as it is a cheap combo point builder that deals quite a bit of damage, is ranged, and applies a bleed on your target that only fades if they leave combat. It also has 3 charges and gives more combo points if several enemies are affected by the bleed effect, so it can really deal a lot of damage for a cheap cost while generating many combo points in clear situations. It is particularly useful when you're being kited. It also has a unique synergy with the legendary Doomblade as the bleed effect works with it. I'll come back on this later on. The second best covenant for assassination is, in my opinion, Nightfare, with Nia as a soulbind. That is the covenant I personally have the most fun with. The Nightfare signature ability, Soul Shape, gives you mobility that you desperately need as Assa. There is also a bit of healing in the new passives added in 9.1. The rogue ability, Sepsis, brings burst damage alongside a bit of CC. Sepsis is a poison attack that deals a lot of nature damage over 10 seconds. Because it is nature damage, it is increased by Shiv, allowing you to deal massive damage during your cooldowns. Also, using Sepsis triggers the passive Growth Invigoration, further amplified by Bonded Hearts for a huge mastery buff, which will greatly increase your burst damage. Having the extra hard-hitting Sepsis dot plus the mastery bonus on top of the usual Assassination Rogue burst damage can really overwhelm your enemies. Also, when Sepsis ends, it allows you to use one stealth ability without being in stealth, so Cheap Shot, Sap, or Ambush. However, as Assa there is a little trick, most likely a slight bug due to Garrote being both a stealth and a non-stealth ability. If you use Garrote, it will behave as if you weren't stealthed, so it will not consume the Sepsis proc, and it will go on cooldown, and not deal increased damage if you play Subterfuge, but it will still silence your target. You can then follow up with a Cheap Shot, so when Sepsis ends you can essentially use 2 stealth-based abilities provided Garrote is the first one. This can turn the tide in your favor because you'll suddenly throw a silence and a stun out of nowhere, which will be very unexpected by the enemy team. The third best covenant would be Venthyr with Nadja as a soulbind. The Venthyr signature ability, Door of Shadows, offers you a mobility, but it needs to be casted and can be interrupted. The Nadja soulbind also brings 2 powerful passives, giving you a lot of haste and versatility every minute and a half or so, which is a great sustained damage increase as Assa, and can be a burst damage increase if it happens on your burst window. The rogue ability, Flagellation, gives a lot of burst damage. It hits the target and then deals additional shadow damage and gives haste for every comp point spent for 12 seconds. This can be brutal burst damage alongside Vendetta. The only issue is that if you are CC'd during the effect, it entirely goes to waste, since you won't be able to spend combo points. The last covenant is Kyrian with Pelagos as soulbind. The signature ability is a potion with a 3-minute cooldown that starts after leaving combat. It heals you for 20% of your maximum health and removes every curse, disease, poison, and bleed effect. It can be really good against some specific specs such as Assassination or Feral, but it is overall a rather weak defensive for a class like Rogue. It can be made to heal 55% of your maximum health over 10 seconds instead with a soulbind, which is nice, but still isn't as good as the tankiness given by Necrolord or the escapes given by Nightfare and Venthyr. The rogue ability, Echoing Reprimand, deals moderate arcane damage with a 45 seconds cooldown, awards 1 combo point and overcharges one of your combo points. Using a damaging finisher with that combo point will count as if you had 7 combo point. This really isn't amazing at all, which is why Kyrian isn't an exceptional covenant. That being said, with its new legendary overcharging 4 combo points instead of just 1, it becomes a much better option, but since Assassination already has great legendaries, it is better to benefit from a better covenant and use another good legendary. Now that we've talked about covenants, let's have a look at conduits. There are 3 kinds of conduits: potency, finesse, and endurance. Potency conduits will increase your damage, finesse conduits will improve your overall utility, and endurance conduits will increase your survivability. In patch 9.1 we can use a total of 6 conduits. For potency conduits, the best one that you absolutely need is well-placed steel. It increases the nature damage bonus of Shift by a significant amount and will greatly increase your burst damage. After you've picked that one, you want to pick either Septic Shock if you're Nightfare, Lashing Scars if you're Venthyr, or Sudden Fractures if you're a Necrolord. The first 2 conduits are a massive burst damage increase, while the third is a powerful sustained damage increase. After this you want to use lethal poisons. Since we now use deadly poison thanks to the new Hunter talent Hemotoxin, lethal poisons is very valuable as deadly poison deals a lot of damage. The last good option is Maim and Mangle. This is great if you're playing Doomblade Legendary as they synergize well together. In the end you'll often play well-placed Steel and your Covenant Conduit, and will have to choose between lethal poisons and Maim and Mangle depending on your Legendary and your expected uptime on targets. Personally, I would mostly pick lethal poisons, if not always. For finesse conduits, you want quick decisions and prepared for all. Quick decisions reduces the cooldown of Shadow Step and increases its range, which is great for a spec like Assa with a low overall mobility compared to other melees. It can also surprise the opponents that try to outrange your step or try to remain in range while you don't have the spell ready and go away at the last second, allowing you to catch them and kill them. Prepared for all is very useful to get your defensives back. It's good against melees as there will always be some attacks that will hit you during evasion, so you will reduce the cooldown by a bit, and it is even better versus casters as you reduce the cooldown of your Cloak of Shadows with every successful interrupt. Since the cooldown of Cloak and Evasion will be shorter than it should be, your enemies might plan a kill for you thinking you don't have your defensives ready, when in fact you have them. If you have to choose between only one of the two, I would personally go for quick decisions as it is really helpful to reach elusive targets, but it's a very debatable choice. Some of the best rogues in the world prefer quick decisions, others prefer prepared for all. Both conduits are great, so you get to choose. For endurance conduits, you want to pick Recuperator. This will allow Slice and Dice to heal you over time, and you should have Slice and Dice up almost all the time past the opener. You shouldn't even have to reply it often thanks to the passive Cut to the Chase, so this is really free healing. Always play this conduit. If you want to play another endurance conduit, then I would say don't play another endurance conduit. A short while ago, when I originally made this guy, I would have said go for a condensed hemisphere, but I think it has been nerfed by 50% in PvP now, or it will be soon, so it becomes a bad conduit, because the healing value will be really low. And about Cloaked in Shadows, it used to be mandatory for rogues because it would give you a shield with no duration after entering stealth, allowing you to remain in stealth forever with dots after Vanish, Shadow Meld, or a normal re-stealth. But with 9.1 it has been nerfed and the shield only lasts 4 seconds, after which stealth will break the dots. So add to that the fact that Assa isn't a spec that tries to re-stealth too much anyway, and this conduit isn't very attractive anymore because you won't get to use it often, and when you do use it, it's actually not really good. You can play it, however, if you face a lot of comps that force you to use Vanish defensively and you need those extra 4 seconds of stealth to survive, such as against Rogue Mage, but it shouldn't be required even in those scenarios, so I would simply not go for an additional Endurance Conduit. To sum it up, ideally you should play well-placed Steel, your Covenant Conduit, and then either Lethal Poisons or Maim and Mangle, even though I would go for Lethal Poisons, so these would be your 3 Potency Conduits. Then you would play Quick Decisions and Prepared for All for your Finesse Conduits, and your last conduit would be Recuperator in your Endurance slot. Let's now talk about Legendaries. There are currently 3 very good Legendaries for Assassination. These are Doomblade, Dustwalker's Patch, and Mark of the Master Assassin. Doomblade is the most popular option at the moment in both 2v2 and 3v3. It allows your Mutilate to inflict a bleed on your target for 45% of the damage dealt, and also increases the damage dealt by Envenom by 5% per bleed on your target. This works with Corrode, Rupture, Internal Bleeding, the Doomblade bleed itself, and also the bleed from Serrated Bone Spike, the Necrolord rogue ability, allowing you to increase Envenom's damage by up to 25%. This legendary therefore works even better if you're a Necrolord, which happens to currently be the best covenant for the spec. Another strong choice is Dustwalker's Patch. This legendary will reduce the cooldown of your Vendetta by 1 second every 30 energy spent. This will let you have your Vendetta every minute at best, and in non-ideal scenarios where you're getting trained, have to kite and use defensive globals, you'll still get it back under a minute and a half. Since Vendetta is such a powerful defensive cooldown, having it more often will be difficult to handle for the enemy team. In addition, it will become an unpredictable cooldown, since the enemy team will never know exactly when you have it back, which will make it almost impossible for them to know when you'll use it. This legendary is a solid choice that is rising in popularity, and actually makes the spec feel a lot more fluid. I personally recommend playing it. Last we have Mark of the Master Assassin. This legendary was nerfed coming into 9.1 and now only lasts 2.4 seconds in PvP combat, which leaves you 3 GCDs while it lasts instead of 4. This nerf doesn't really impact Assassination because 2 to 3 GCDs matter when you use this legendary to burst down a target. If you play it, you will use either Vanish or Shadow Meld during your Vendetta to use 2 Envenoms that will critically strike your target, dealing massive damage, so the use is fairly simple. Vanish or Shadow Meld, Envenom, Mark for Death, Envenom. Several things to note about this legendary though. First, it gains a lot of value if you're a Night Elf, as you can trigger it with both Shadow Meld and Vanish. That can allow you to either trigger it twice every 2 minutes when other races can only do it once, or to use it only once with Shadow Meld while keeping Vanish for CC or defense when other races have to comment Vanish during the burst and then lack it for CC or defense. Therefore, in some matchups, this legendary will be a very bad choice if you're not a Night Elf, as you will need to use Vanish to survive or to help your team survive. So, if you play it in that kind of scenario, it will be as if you were playing without a legendary, which is not good. And second, this is more of a 2v2 legendary. Since there is only one DPS to deal with in 2v2, you can get away with using Vanish and or Shadow Meld for damage. Now in 3v3, I recommend you keep Vanish to either land a sap, to survive, or to silence and stun the entire enemy team at an opportune moment to either help your own team survive or to lock down the enemy team to land a kill. It isn't really good to be forced to use Vanish for damage only in 3v3 when the spell can do so much more. And so you'd better off picking another legendary. Only for 3v3, right? In 2v2, I believe it is still a very powerful legendary that can really surprise the enemy team, especially if you play a bursty covenant such as Venthyr or Nightfear, or maybe even or Venthyr or Nightfear, that's all. You can pick what you like best among these legendaries, and you will do good in arena because all three are good. Obviously, as I said, Master Assassin isn't really good in threes. So for threes, Doomblade or Dustwalker's Patch. For twos, Doomblade, Dustwalker's Patch, or Master Assassin, up to your personal preference. The other legendaries I didn't talk about are really not worth it in my opinion. Playing with them is putting yourself at a disadvantage. Alright, let's now talk about the rotation. I'll be going over the opener, the burst rotation, and the sustained damage rotation. We'll begin with the opener. There are a few different openers you can perform depending on whether the target can use spells while silenced or not. The most standard opener is the one you'll use whenever the target can use abilities while silenced, so whenever you open on someone who isn't a pure caster. First, you'll want to sub a target you don't open on. Then, you'll use Mark for Death from Stealth into a kidney shot on your kill target. You'll follow this by Garrote, Shiv, Rupture, Mutilate until you have 4 combo points or more, and then Envenom. This is the most basic opener. It will let you apply your dots and deal strong damage a few seconds after coming out of stealth. Now if you're a Necrolord, you'll want to use Serrated Bone Spike before Rupture. This will apply your third bleed to your target for added damage, and empower your Envenoms if you play with the Doomblade legendary. Now if you want to burst down your target in your opener, you also use Vendetta right after Kidney Shot, and Sepsis, Flagellation, or Echoing Reprimand depending on your Covenant right before Shiv. If you're opening on a spec that cannot do anything while silenced, such as a mage or a priest, you will start with a Garrote after your sap on their teammate. You'll follow this by a Mutilate and Rupture, or a Serrated Bone Spike and Rupture if you're a Necrolord. Then you'll use your Mark for Death Kidney Shot as the silence fades, followed by Shiv, Mutilate until 4 combo points or more, and then Envenom. Once again, if you want to burst, you'll use your Vendetta alongside Kidney Shot, and you'll use Sepsis, Flagellation, or Echoing Reprimand just before Shiv. The reason here is that if the target can't stop you when silenced, you want to apply your bleeds before the Kidney Shot in order to have more globals to do instant damage during the stun. Before we move on to the burst rotation, there is one last thing you can be required to do in the opener. Sometimes you will have in your team a spec with CC on the same DR as Sap, such as a Hunter and his Freezing Trap. If you go sap the enemy healer to then open on an enemy DPS, that DPS could react between your sap and your stun and pre-use a defensive ability, or teleport away, or anything else. To avoid that, you can sap the enemy DPS instead of the healer, chip shot the enemy healer, and then proceed with the openers described above on the enemy DPS, so either Garrote or Mark for Death Kidney, while the target is still sapped and thus can't pre-use any defensive. Your teammate will CC the healer off your cheap shot. And that is all I have to say about openers. Now, regarding the burst rotation, it is actually quite simple. Since I've already talked about bursting in the opener, this burst rotation assumes combat has already begun. First and foremost, you want to have your Garrote and your Rupture up on your target with enough duration for your burst window to happen, as well as your Serrated Bone Spike if you're a Necrolord. Second, you want to have Slice and Dice up on yourself. Third, if possible, you want your team to land CC on the enemies you are not attacking, or use your blind of the enemy healer if you have it. Or on an enemy DPS that has no trinket if you're attacking the enemy healer, and go for a kill. Once everything on this list is set, you will kidney shot your target and use Vendetta immediately. Follow this with Sepsis, Flagellation, or Echoing Reprimand depending on your Covenant. Then Shiv, Mutilate until 4 or 5 combo points, Envenom, Marked for Death, Envenom, and then Mutilate again until 4 or 5 combo points, Envenom, and repeat. If you're a Necrolord, you can use a couple of serrated bone spikes to fill your combo points during your burst rotation, as it is much cheaper than Mutilate. Note that if you're playing with the Master Assassin Legendary, you want to use Shadow Meld or Vanish just before the double Envenom combo in order to have both of them crit. The Mutilate that will follow will also be crit and award you 4 combo points, allowing you to Envenom immediately after. You can also have Soft Burst without your Vendetta every kidney shot by doing the exact same rotation without Vendetta and without the Covenant ability. Now that the burst rotation has been explained, all that's left is the sustained damage rotation. The sustained damage rotation is, in fact, what you're going to be doing when you don't have kidney shot available. Due to the randomness of combo point generation, it is more of a priority list than an actual rotation. The most important thing is that you want to make sure your primary target is affected by your growth and your rupture. Then, if you have your kidney shot in your Shiv and your primary target is off stun DR, you want to default to the burst rotation. Then you want to make sure you have Slice and Dice active if it isn't already. Don't use too many combo points on Slice and Dice, as it will refresh itself with Cut to the Chase, so only using 2 or 3 combo points is fine, as your next Envenom will extend the buff. Then you want to apply Growth and Rupture to the secondary targets if they are close by, as it will dramatically increase your pressure, overall damage, and even damage on your main target. If the target is far away and going to it will make it hard to come back to the primary target, for instance if you're facing a Resto Druid Frostmage, then do not do that and remain on the primary target. And last, you'll use your Envenom to spend your combo points if everything said above is already done. Of course, during that phase you will generate your combo points mostly with Mutilate, with Growth when you need to reapply it, and with Poisoned Knife if you're being kited or need to slow the target that isn't in melee, or need to reapply your poisons on a ranged target. If you're a Necrolord, don't use all of your serrated bone spikes outside of your burst windows, as the spell deals a lot more damage than Mutilate, so having a couple charges and a kidney shot to replace Mutilate is really nice in terms of damage output. You can however use the ability if you're about to cap charges, or if the extra damage will force a target to play defensively. Now that we are done with the rotation, let's have a look at macros. Macros are a wonderful way to make you a lot more efficient in PvP combat and even in WoW combat in general. So if you plan on playing PvP seriously, then you absolutely need to use at least a few macros. You may ask, which ones? In my opinion, as a rogue, what you absolutely need is a sap macro and focus macros for your CC spells. The sap macro is a macro that allows you to sap stealth targets. Sapping a rogue, a druid, or a hunter out of stealth will put your team at a great advantage. You have 2 ways to do it. You can use 3 different keybinds with Saparina 1, Saparina 2, and Saparina 3 macros, or create a more generic macro that will clear your current target and attempt to sap anything close by. That way, if a rogue walks on top of you, it will target him and sap him. I personally have both, and I strongly recommend going with the sap arena macros in arena. They are a lot more effective than the generic sap macros and allow you to target whoever you like. Oftentimes, the generic macro won't sap your target even though you saw it, which never happens with the sap arena macros. And one last detail, the generic sap macro will not work if the stealther is next to an unstealth player, because then the macro will target the unstealth player and sap him, while the sap arena macro can only sap the specific enemy that you want. The second very important group of macros are, as I said, the focus macros. Focus macros allow you to use a spell on your focus target while still attacking your current target, so you don't have to constantly swap target to land CC and then do damage. Because rogues have a lot of CC, these macros are essential to do both proper damage and proper CC. Ideally, you want that on every CC spell, so Sap, Blind, Kidney Shot, Cheap Shot, Garrote, and of course Kick and Shadow Step. I also strongly recommend having it for Poison Knife to slow off targets. I personally use that keybind a lot, Focus Poison Knife. You can add Dismantle to the list, but this one isn't as important. I personally also have Rupture on Focus to bleed off targets while keeping my main target. Of course, you can use Arena macros instead of Focus, but this requires a lot more keybinds, so if you're going to play, especially if you're going to play 3v3, so I think simply using Focus macros for most abilities while having keybinds to both Arena 1, 2 and 3 as Focus is a good way to play, and then you will just swap your Focus and then use your Focus CC spell. So that's what I do. These macros are in my opinion mandatory. While I only showed you really basic macros, you can also type them with modifiers, so that's what I do again. If you do this, then the spell will go on your target if you simply press the keybind, but if you press the modifier plus the keybind, it will go on the focus target. This is the exact same result as the focus macros, but it has the benefit of saving space on your action bar. So these were the mandatory macros. So focus macros, sap macro. Now if you want to add a few more, you can have Shadow Step Party 1, Shadow Step Party 2 macros to quickly step to your allies without having to waste a second targeting them. This can be useful in some situations. I personally use those, but half the time I still mouse over my party frames and manage to escape just as well, so I don't believe they are essential. Another useful one is to macro tricks of the trade on your ally with the most damage in your kidney shot. So just put his name directly into the macro and change every time you have a new partner. That way, when you play with a Talent Thick of Thieves and initiate a go with your kidney shot, you will also empower your ally for even more damage for the duration of your kidney shot. Keep a separate keybind for your tricks of the trade also in case your ally needs it outside of your kidney shot. So as I said, the important macros are CC1s on focus targets, sap macro, and then you can add stuff that you find useful, such as what I said, step on party, tricks of the trade on ally, step sap for demon hunters when they have the spectral sight. But don't try to have too many macros everywhere for everything, because this will end up being really confusing. It will just, take too much space on your bars and have too many buttons to press instead of focusing on the ones that are really important. So as long as you have the macros that are that I said are mandatory, so the ones to interrupt and CC efficiently, you're good to go. The rest is just a bonus. And for the last part of this guide, the arena comps you can play to climb the ladder. Regarding 2 versus 2, it is fairly simple. Assassination is a spec that needs a healer, so you will only play with healers. You want to play with either a Discipline Priest, a Holy Priest, a Restoration Shaman, or a Restoration Druid. You can also play with a Holy Paladin if you like it, although it isn't as good as the healers I just mentioned. Last, you don't want to play with a Beast with a Monk, as there is no synergy with Rogue whatsoever. If you choose to play with a Priest or a Shaman, you will want to play very aggressively. The fact that they bring high damage, CC on short cooldown, and a purge allow you to take teams down rapidly with overwhelming pressure. On the other hand, if you play with a Druid, you will have a more dampening oriented playstyle with your dots, Hemotoxin, Cyclone, and powerful Druid healing and dampening. Regarding 3s, you currently have 3 comps that are viable to high rating. The first is of course Rogue Mage Healer. If you play Assa, then it's best if you play with a Druid, a Holy Pala, or a Holy Priest. Since you like CC, they can help the Mage setup. It also works with the Discipline Priest, but the Mage has to work extra hard to land polymorphs on the healer and guarantee triple CC. Of course, your goal will be to kill one designated target while CCing the others. Depending on trinkets, positioning, and defensives, you can swap to a new target and kill them very quickly, because you have extremely powerful burst cooldowns. The second comp you can play is Rogue Priest Shaman with a Shadow Priest and a Resto Shaman. Shadow Priests currently deal very high damage with your dots and the Priest dots, plus all the instant CC your team has, as well as the double Purge Priest and Shaman bring. You have a comp that can overwhelm opponents very quickly. Your goal will be to have spread pressure on several targets and kidney one while CCing the others with blind or with the Priest ranged instant CC, maybe followed up by Hex to land a kill. And the third comp you have available is a Rogue Hunter Healer. It works best with a Beast Mastery Hunter and either a Priest or a Shaman as a healer. This comp isn't made to last, so you want to heal your opponent very quickly. The overall objective is similar to Rogue Mage, CC the healer and kill the kill target in a kidney shot. CC on healer will mostly be Freezing Trap and Psychic Scream. Of course, there are always more comps that can be played, but these 3 are the best ones available to Assassination at the moment, and they aren't too difficult to learn as they have existed for some time, so the way they are played is very well known, and you will find many people to somewhat teach you or show you how to play them. If you're looking for something else in 2v2, I'm afraid you don't have many options. As I said, you need a healer to play Assassination. You don't have enough CC or other tools that make it very viable with another DPS. However, if you are looking for something else in 3 versus 3, you can play with a Warlock or with a Balanced Druid and be successful. That is going to be it for this guide. I wish I had been able to finish it earlier, but sadly I wasn't, and I'm sorry for this. In any case, I hope it will be helpful to you on your PvP Season 2 adventure. Have a nice day and see you in my next video.